Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Melissa Green. I'm a Technology Accessibility Training Specialist with the Faculty Resource Center's Emerging Technology and Accessibility team. Our team works to ensure that all technology users, including those with disabilities, have a functional and accessible technology experience with the university's websites and our instructional and emerging technologies. You can find more information about our efforts on our website at accessibility.ua.edu. This slide includes a picture of me. I have my webcam turned off, but I thought you might like to see who you're speaking with today. Whether it's a handout, a flyer, a poster, an article, a magazine, a mailer, or other digital content, it's important to ensure your InDesign document is accessible to people with disabilities. This session covers generating an accessible PDF from InDesign. Primarily, what we'll talk about is selecting the most accessible export options and using Adobe Acrobat to touch up the exported file. I'll also share some resources you can use to implement other accessibility strategies like tagging and ordering content and identifying and describing images. Most folks find it challenging to both watch and do hands-on work during a webinar. However, if you do wish to follow along, you can access the exercise files I'll be using via Box. I'm pasting a link to those files in the chat. I suggest watching today, then downloading the files to work with in conjunction with the webinar recording so you can work at your own pace. Just a quick moment for housekeeping. To improve audio quality, I've muted everyone by default, but when you want to talk, you can select the microphone option in the Zoom control bar to mute or unmute yourself. You can also choose to have your camera on or off. Please do mute your microphone when you're not speaking. When I'm talking or sharing my screen, please write in the chat box and let me know if you can't see or hear something. You're welcome to use the chat box throughout. I may not be watching closely while I'm talking, but I'll do my best to check in every once in a while. And if I don't see your question or comment immediately, don't worry, I'll come back to it at the end. This session is being recorded, and I'll send you a link to that recording via email in the next few days, along with links to resources shared during the session. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Before we talk about ensuring the PDFs we generate from InDesign are accessible, let's talk about when to use PDFs in the first place. Portable document format, or PDF, is great for distributing documents that need to be printed, but it often isn't the best format for making information available online. One of the fundamental principles of web accessibility is that HTML content or web content will almost always be more accessible than non-HTML content, including PDF files. So before making a PDF available on a website, you might ask yourself these questions. Is the information meant to be read online? If so, rendering the information as an actual web page may be preferable. A web page can be opened in a browser without special software or apps and displayed in a way that's responsive to the size of the screen. A web page contains navigation and easy access to other site content. A web page is easy to discover. The contents of a web page are easy to search, and a web page is easily shared with a link. Is this an application, survey, or form with fields that a user will fill out? Digital forms are often easier to create and collect data from, and something like a web form or a Qualtrics form may be easier to create in a way that's fully accessible than a PDF with interactive form fields. Will the information need to be updated frequently? Making the content available as a web page rather than a PDF means you can quickly access it and update it as often as needed, instead of having to find and edit a source document save it as a new PDF, make accessibility fixes in Acrobat, delete the old version, then upload the new version and update any links to it. And finally, can the information be printed just as easily from a web page? One reason why folks will sometimes make PDFs available on a website is to offer them for printing. Like PDFs, web pages can also be printed, especially when your site has a good print style sheet. So unless a document is intended for print, like a poster or a flyer, PDF may not be the best format for it, particularly when it comes to making it publicly available online. If you must use a PDF on a website, though, you can ensure its contents are accessible by doing a couple things. One is creating the PDF with accessibility in mind, which is going to be our primary focus today, specifically what we can do when using InDesign to create PDFs. But you might also consider making the contents available in another format in addition to the PDF. So for example, providing the information as text on a web page with a link to the PDF included on that web page. All right, so now that we talked about some considerations that apply to PDFs, generally speaking, we're going to shift gears and actually start looking at some InDesign files. So I'm sharing on my screen InDesign, which is open on my computer. I have an InDesign file open, an InDesign file. This is a sample file from a lynda.com course called Creating Accessible PDFs. It's an excellent course. The instructor's name is Chad Chilius, and I highly recommend that you check out that course in general, but specifically the InDesign portion of the course, as it is much more detailed and advanced than what we're going to be able to get into in an hour-long webinar. You can currently access lynda.com content at no charge with a Tuscaloosa Public Library card, and it's my understanding that UA employees will soon have access via the HR Learning Management System, which I'm really excited about. The first step in creating an accessible PDF from an InDesign file is to ensure that the original InDesign file is as accessible as possible. This is a pretty sort of general principle across the board. Whether a document is generated from InDesign, Word, PowerPoint, or another program, the accessibility of a PDF largely depends on the accessibility of the source file and the manner in which you generate the PDF. Before I show you what to do when generating a PDF from InDesign, I'll first show you what not to do. So many InDesign users are accustomed to creating a PDF file by going to the File menu, and I'm doing this now, by going to the File menu and choosing Print, and choosing Adobe PDF as the printer. Unfortunately, this method will not pass any accessibility information onto the PDF file. So we're going to cancel out of this. And instead of using the print menu or the print function, we're going to go to the File menu and this time choose Export instead. I'm going to save this file. I'm just going to call it Exported. Looking at the Save As type in the Save dialog menu or in the Export dialog menu, we've got a couple different choices here. We can create an accessible PDF using Adobe PDF Print, which is currently selected, or, and I'm clicking on the drop-down box to show you the other options, we can choose Adobe PDF Interactive. Adobe PDF Interactive is the method you would want to use if you were including interactive buttons or interactive form fields in your PDF file. I'm going to choose that first. We're going to go through both of these, but I'm going to start with the Adobe PDF Interactive. So I'm choosing that as my export option, choosing Save. And when I select Save, that is going to bring up the Export to Interactive PDF dialog box. The important thing is down here at the bottom. So the bottom right of the Export to Interactive PDF dialog box, where I'm hovering my mouse, we have a checkbox labeled Create Tagged PDF. We want to enable this. We want to make sure that it's checked. I'm switching over to Adobe Acrobat Pro DC. This is a PDF I generated from another document. I'm opening up the tag panel for this particular document to show you what that looks like. So while it's a bit more complicated to this, than this, excuse me, when people talk about accessible PDF files, they're usually referring to PDF files that have a couple things. One is actual text versus an image of text. So text that you can select using your mouse, like I'm doing now, or text that you can search and find matching characters in. And PDFs that have tags. And tags are what we see here in the left sidebar in the tags panel. Tags are the basis of an accessible PDF file. They indicate the structure of the document, communicate the order in which items should be read by a screen reader, and determine exactly which items will be read by a screen reader. A screen reader is a software or application that converts digital text to synthesized speech. If you've ever had a conversation with Siri or had Google Maps speak your driving directions aloud, that's similar to the text-to-speech functionality that a screen reader uses. People who are blind, people who have low vision, some users with cognitive disabilities, and others who simply prefer to hear text read aloud instead of or in addition to reading it off the screen may use a screen reader to access the computer. And that's why it's important that we make sure the contents of a PDF are tagged so that they will be read by a screen reader and read in the correct order. So when creating a PDF from an InDesign document, you want to do so in a way that preserves the accessibility of the source document and includes these tags. And selecting the Create Tagged PDF checkbox is vital to that. So I'm going to switch back to the screen in InDesign where we need to do that. So we want to select Create Tagged PDF so we get those tags. You might also want to select Use Structure for tab order to tell it to use the structure of the document for the tab order. The tab order is the order in which a user moves focus from one element to another by pressing the tab key on the keyboard. Keyboard accessibility is one of the most important aspects of digital accessibility. Many users with physical disabilities rely on a keyboard. Blind users also typically use a keyboard for navigation rather than a mouse. Some users may use modified keyboards or other assistive technologies that mimic the functionality of a keyboard, like a switch. So you might also select Use Structure for tab order to tell InDesign and Acrobat to use the structure of your document when establishing the order in which someone will move through the document when hitting the tab key. Most of the other export settings in this dialog will depend on the nature of your document. Its layout, pages, spreads, compression, image quality, that really is going to vary depending on the nature of the document. I've been in the General tab of the Export to Interactive PDF settings. I'm now selecting Advanced to go to the Advanced options. There are a couple of accessibility specific options here that we need to take a look at. The first is the display title setting. So here you choose whether to display the document title or the file name in the Acrobat application title bar. The document title provides a title for the PDF that's needed for accessibility, and it also benefits search engine optimization for PDFs that will be published online. So we want to select document title rather than file name because we want the actual document title to show in the top menu of Acrobat when that PDF is opened. You'll see here next to that setting, there's a little warning sign because right now I don't have a document title defined in my InDesign file. But as soon as you add that, it will change into an information button and it will show you the text that's in the title field. Also under the accessibility options, you're prompted to define a language. When the language is defined, screen readers can load the correct pronunciation rules. And as a result, users are better able to understand the content. So some words are spelled the same, but pronounced differently in different languages. I'm thinking the word table in English, T-A-B-L-E, in French would be something like table. So specifying the language for the document will help the screen reader pronounce it correctly. What you want to choose here is the language that the majority of the document is in. Some documents are entirely in one language, so we would obviously select that. Others may include multiple languages. I'm thinking of a brochure or a booklet that maybe said greetings or hello or welcome in Spanish, French, German, English, and so on. If you have multiple languages in your document, choose the one that's used the most. You can then, in Acrobat, if you need to do so, tag the content in languages, other languages accordingly. So if you had a Spanish phrase in your primarily English document, you could tag that phrase as being in Spanish. So this document is entirely in American English, so I'll set the language to English, USA. I am going to choose export to export this file. I've got some missing fonts, I'm going to ignore that. So export the file. It's now opened in Acrobat, and I'm opening the tags panel so you can see that some tags have been generated. I'm going to expand all of the tags. A shortcut for this is to select the topmost tag and choose Control A. Control A, come on. Oh, sorry, I'm moving too fast. Okay, and that will expand all of your tag tree. So we can see that we exported this document in such a way that the tags are present. So I'm going to go back into InDesign and now export this using the other choice. That was the interactive PDF. We're now going to do the print PDF. So it's the same file, but this time I'm choosing File, Export. I'm going to name it Exported Print. And in the type, change that to Adobe PDF Print. I'm going to choose Save. So many of the options here, let me get this options window over to where you can see it. So the Export Adobe PDF dialog popped up when I selected Export. Many of the options here are the same as what we saw with the interactive PDF. However, what we can do here is start with a preset. I'm going to show you how you can create and save an accessibility friendly preset that you'll be able to choose each time rather than having to make these settings each time. So I'm going to start by building my preset off of smallest file size. Yes, there are some presets here that already say accessibility. That's because I created them. So I'm going to start with smallest file size. You don't have to start with smallest file size. It might make sense for you to start with one of these others. But for me, if I'm putting a PDF on the web, my concern is generally the size of the file. So I'm starting with smallest file size. In the viewing area, for view, I'm going to set to view as fit page and layout as single page. This isn't necessary for accessibility, just for how I want my document to look. Now the other thing, which is very important, is to enable that Create Tagged PDF checkbox to make sure that the tags are assigned when the PDF is exported. So I've selected that. And because I'm going to be posting this PDF on the web, or I'm pretending as if I'm going to be posting this PDF on the web, I'm going to go ahead and leave Optimize for Fast Web View selected. And then I always like to view the PDF after exporting as well. So I'm going to ensure that's selected. Down here at the bottom, under Include, I'm going to enable hyperlinks and bookmarks. Hyperlinks and bookmarks are going to benefit all users, but can be especially helpful for navigation and function for assistive technology users. So someone using a keyboard or a switch. I've been indicating those settings in the general category. I'm moving to advanced now. In the advanced category, we're going to see the same accessibility options we saw with our previous export. So we want to change the display title to the document title and indicate the primary language of the document, which is English USA. Now, I don't want to have to remember these settings every time I export to the PDF format. So what I'm going to do is select this Save Preset button in the lower left corner and give this preset a name. I already have a few named PDF accessibility. So I'm going to call it PDF accessibility 4. You could call yours something like PDF accessibility, accessibility friendly, whatever is going to be most memorable for you. I'm going to say OK. And now where I'm hovering my mouse up at the top of the screen, you can see that that's available as a preset. I'm choosing export to go ahead and export that file. And now exported print, the resulting PDF opens in Adobe Acrobat Pro DC. Once again, I'm going to go to the tags pane in the left sidebar. Click to expand the panel. And you're going to notice that I have all of the tags in here for this document. So now that we're over in Acrobat, I'm going to show you a couple tools you can use to make touch-ups in your files after exporting them from InDesign. Now, while it does have tags, this PDF file we just created does still have a lot of accessibility barriers. We haven't applied any of the best practices for creating accessible InDesign documents that we'll be going over shortly. So I don't want you to be too discouraged when the Acrobat accessibility tools indicate that there are problems or changes to be made. But that being said, let's go ahead and look at those tools anyway. Adobe Acrobat Pro DC offers two primary tools to help content authors in creating accessible PDFs: the Accessibility Checker, Full Check, and the Make Accessible action. If working with PDFs is something you do regularly, you might want to make sure both of these tools are easily accessible from your tools menu. So I'm going to expand my right sidebar where I have some tool shortcuts. Some of these came by default with Acrobat. Some of these I've added. I'm going to show you how to add them if you want to use them. So the two that I recommend you adding are Accessibility and Action Wizard. So I'm actually going to remove those and add them. So you can do that by going to Tools and then searching. So the first one is Accessibility. I just started typing the word accessibility, and the accessibility tool set comes up. To add that, we select Add, and a shortcut to that tool set is added in the right sidebar. The other is the Make Accessible Action Wizard, which is part of the Action Wizard tool set. So I'm finding that by searching for Action Wizard and adding the shortcut by selecting Add. So both Accessibility and Action Wizard have been added to my right sidebar. You can rearrange these tools by clicking and dragging on them. I use Accessibility and Action Wizard quite a bit, so I'm dragging them up to the top to make them easier for me to access. And then closing my tool search to return back to the document. You can use the accessibility full check command to perform a thorough check for many characteristics of accessible PDFs. It's going to look for things like whether alternative text is present for images, whether tags are present, whether the document language is indicated, whether the fonts that are used in the document can be mapped reliably to Unicode text. It's possible to choose what kinds of accessibility issues to look for in the full check by using the accessibility checker options. There's also options to view and save the results. And this full check is the tool I prefer to use in today's scenario, a situation in which we have access to the source document and we have the ability to change the source document and export it in a way that maintains tags and other accessibility information. So let's use the accessibility full check to check the accessibility of our PDF. So I'm going to start by selecting the Accessibility Tools panel from the right sidebar. From the Accessibility Tools panel, I'm selecting Full Check to open the Accessibility Checker Options dialog. I'm going to leave everything here as is, but I want to point out a few things. One is that you can, in the Report Options category, choose to create an accessibility report as an HTML file, or to create an accessibility report that's attached to the document. That's not something I usually use when I'm working on PDFs for myself, but if you're helping someone else evaluate the accessibility of a PDF, or someone has asked you to run the accessibility checker on your own PDF before providing it to them, you may want to create and save a report. In the page range area, you can choose to check all of the pages in the document or just certain pages. In the accessibility checking options area, you can select different categories of things to check. You can choose specific rules to check. Again, I almost always leave these as is, but I wanted you to know that that's available. To begin the check, you can choose Start Checking, which I'm doing now. Once a report has been run, or once the check has been run, the issues that have been found are displayed in the Accessibility Checker panel in the left sidebar. And the results tree displays a couple different things. So the results are broken into categories like document, page content, forms, alternate text, and so on. You can see detailed results within each of these categories by expanding the categories. Acrobat does kind of indicate in which categories issues have been found, so you don't have to expand all of them unless you want to. So in this document, for example, there are 3 issues found in the document category and 1 issue found in the page content category. So we know we need to look there. I'm expanding the document category to look in more detail at the results. So the results tree, the list of results, displays different states for each rule check. We see 3 of them here. So passed, which is represented by a green check mark, indicates that this item passed the accessible check. Needs manual check, which is indicated by the blue question mark icon, means that the accessibility checker feature could not check the item automatically. It's something that a human needs to verify manually. And failed, which is represented by the red X, means that the item did not pass the accessibility check. There's a couple other result states you might see. Skipped by user. If you don't select a rule in the accessibility checker options, you'll see skip by user. You also have the ability to pass an item manually, which we'll do in a moment, and that will appear slightly differently as well. But those are what the different types of results you'll be getting primarily, and the icons that represent them. So our document has received a pass or a needs manual check for each of the rules in this document category except title. Title failed. To fix a failed check, you can right-click on the item in the accessibility checker panel or control-click on a Mac. I'm going to do that now, so I'm right-clicking on title failed. This opens up a context menu with several options. Fix is not present for all errors, but when it is, that's really great. It makes it easy. If you select Fix, Acrobat either fixes the item automatically or displays a dialog box prompting you to fix the item by entering information or making a choice. For example, if I select Fix, which I'll do in a moment, we'll be prompted to enter a title for the document. If you need to fix an alternative text error, if you select Fix, you get a dialog box that allows you to type in a text description for each image in the document. Skip rule, choosing this deselects the rule in the accessibility checker options dialog box for future checks of the document, and it will change the item status to skipped. Explain opens up the relevant online help entry. Check again runs the checker again on all items. You'll want to choose this option if you modify anything. Show report displays the accessibility report for the document with links to tips on how to repair failed checks. And then options opens the accessibility checker options dialog box where checking options can be set. So let's right-click on some of the issues reported in our document. First, logical reading order, which Acrobat flagged because it needs to be manually checked. So I'm right-clicking on logical reading order and selecting explain to get some guidance on what this means. And when I selected explain, that opened up the Adobe support entry for this specific rule or check. So the information is somewhat sparse, but it says logical reading order, verify this rule check manually, make sure that the reading order displayed in the tags panel coincides with the logical reading order of the document. All right, so I'm going to return to the document, do what it said. So go to the tags panel, and I need to make sure that the logical reading order, so the order of the tags or the reading order of the tags corresponds with an order that's logical. So the way that I typically do this is by using my mouse to click on the topmost tag in the tag tree. So that's the one labeled tags. And then use the arrow keys on my mouse to navigate down through the tag tree. So as I navigate through these tags, document, art, figure, section, heading 1, and so on, the corresponding content in the document, so the content in the document that's tagged with those tags, will be highlighted with a blue rectangle. So I'm essentially watching to see if the blue rectangle is moving in order, if it's moving in the order in which I would want someone to read this document. So I'm about to strike my down arrow key and watch what's happening in the PDF visually. So document, selected the entire document. Art, selected artwork. Figure is the Landon Hotel logo. Image is a child tag of the figure tag. Section selects the section of text that starts at the bottom of the first page. Heading 1 selects the text employee manual. Paragraph selects the text revised April 1st, 2018, and so on. So I'm just going to move throughout the tag tree using my down arrow key and seeing that these blue rectangles come in an order that makes sense for reading. A question you might have that I get asked somewhat regularly is, do I have to do this for an entire document? This document is 21 pages long. It has quite a few tags. I personally do not check every single tag in the entire document for reading order. What I do is try to find a page or two that are well representative of the document. So let's say if most of my document has one column of text or a column of text with images in the right sidebar, I'll check the reading order on those pages because they're pretty representative of the rest of the document. I'll also check reading order on pages that have any type of special formatting, like a table of contents or an image or a table or footnotes or endnotes. So I think that's sufficient to check a page or two that's fairly representative of the rest of the document and to check any areas of special formatting. But that's the process, regardless of how many pages or what kinds of pages you're checking, is that you're navigating the tag tree using your mouse, paying attention to the highlighting in the document to make sure it follows a reading order that's logical or makes sense. Now, what do you do if it's not logical or if it doesn't make sense? Well, you can manually reorder these tags by clicking and dragging on them. So let's say, for example, I'm selecting heading 1, which is how the words employee manual are tagged. Let's say that if for some reason I did not want that to be read first, if I wanted the revision date to be read before the words employee manual, I could adjust that by clicking and dragging the tag. So I'm selecting H1 and moving it below paragraph. That's the easiest way to reorder the tags is by clicking and dragging them. You can also cut them. So right click and choose cut and then paste them into their new location. You just want to be careful when you do that to drag them or paste them into the correct level of the hierarchy. So I want to paste this as a child tag underneath section. So checking the logical reading order, after you've done that, you can go back to the accessibility checker results. And if you wish, right click here and choose pass. And now we'll see that passed manually that I mentioned earlier. Now, I didn't do enough checking for me to confidently say that it passed. So I'm just showing you that for sake of example. If this was my actual document, I would want to do a little more checking. I didn't get very far into the document. But in any case, let's say I did, and I think it passes, so I'm choosing pass manually. Right-clicking on another error, color contrast, I'm going to choose explain. And again, that will take me directly to the relevant help documentation. When this check fails, it's possible that the document contains content that isn't accessible to people who are colorblind. To fix this issue, make sure that the document's content adheres to the guidelines outlined in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. And we've got some continued guidance there. Color contrast is something that is specified by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And if you weren't aware, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.0 AA, are the standards that UA has adopted under our Web Resources Accessibility Policy. So all of the content made available on UA's public or campus-wide web resources needs to meet WCAG 2.0 AA requirements, which include specific contrast ratios. So in order for something to be accessible or really usable for everyone, there needs to be sufficient contrast between the color of the foreground text and the page background. There's some good resources out there you can use to check this. I'm showing a screenshot of one on the screen right now, and that's the WebAIM Color Contrast Checker. The way it works is you enter in the hex codes for your text colors. So in this case, I've chosen a color combination of a light gray background and a dark gray foreground text. and enter in the codes for those in the checker. Running the checker, I'm told that this combination of colors fails to meet WCAG 2.0 AA. So I get the result of the words fail. They're also in red. If I wanted to find a more accessible color combination, I could use this tool to do that by adjusting the lightness or the darkness or the lightness slider for the foreground color or the background color until I got a passing result. So I would want to make the background color lighter, make the foreground text color darker, or maybe a little bit of both until I got a contrast ratio that was sufficient. And that's primarily for folks who have low vision or color blindness. However, everyone can benefit from good contrast. You know, someone trying to look at a web page or a document on a smartphone in the sunshine, someone trying to see something on a screen and from the back of a large lecture hall, or in a room that has a lot of windows. Those are all situations in which good color contrast will be helpful. WebAIM Color Contrast Checker is one. It works online. Another that our team likes a lot, and both of these are free, is Color Contrast Analyzer from the Paciello group. It works in a similar fashion. You can provide the color codes for your color combination, and it will tell you whether or not that combination meets WCAG 2.0 AA. This tool also has an eyedropper, which is nice, particularly if you're working with PDFs. You don't have to try to figure out what the color codes are. You can just click to select the foreground and background colors and check their contrast. So I'll send you links to both of those in the webinar follow-up email. They're both free. WebAIM one is online. Color Contrast Analyzer is something that you download and install on your computer. The issue with that, though, is by the time you get to the accessibility check feature in a PDF, really you're kind of too late to be establishing things like your color palette. So I would actually recommend that you do this checking at the time that you design a document, or if you're working with a graphic designer, at the time that the graphic designer provides you with your first proof. It's pretty difficult to change color combinations in the PDF that's intended to be a final product. So I would actually suggest doing that much earlier in the process. Once you've ensured that the colors used in your document have sufficient contrast, you can again sort of mark those as passed, manually passed, and the indicator will change from the blue question mark to the green check mark. Let's look at title as an example of a failed result. So I'm going to right click on title. Title is one of the issues for which you do get a fix option. Those are great. So I'm going to select fix. When you have the fix option, as I mentioned before, you're going to get a prompt that helps you take action to resolve the issue. So in this case, a dialog box pops up where you can type in a title for the document. So I'm going to uncheck the Leave As Is checkbox so I have the ability to type in the title field. This document is intended to be an employee manual for a fictional hotel called the Landon Hotel. So I'm going to call this document the Landon Hotel Employee Manual. That's all you have to provide in order to pass the title check. You may also wish to provide some of this other information, but the title check is looking for the presence of this title here. So I'm going to choose OK. I now get a passing result for title. The other thing that changing that does using fix is it changes a property. So I'm going to go into File, Properties, where I provided the title that's now associated with the document properties, the Landon Hotel Employee Manual. The other thing fixing that did is in the settings for initial view, it's set to show the document title rather than the file name at the top of the window. So right now it's showing the file name, exported print PDF. If I were to save this, close it, and open it again, it would show the document title, the Landon Hotel Employee Manual. Up, and there it goes. I actually didn't even have to close it. That's just more user-friendly and definitely screen reader friendly. A lot of times our file names are not really designed for human consumption. They have things like version numbers or dates in them. The Landon Hotel Employee Manual is definitely much more descriptive. All right, so we still have an issue here in page content, tab order, failed. My workflow for this would be, as it is for anything else, right-click, choose Fix where that is an option, choose Explain where it isn't. I'm choosing Fix. Tab order set to match structure order in all pages successfully. Well, that's good. So now the user should be able to tab through the document in an order that makes sense. So that's a good way to touch up accessibility in Acrobat if you have access to a source document that was created with accessibility in mind. But that isn't always the case. If the original source document is not available, or if the document still has a number of accessibility barriers after we've addressed them in InDesign, we might want to use the other accessibility tool instead, and that's the Make Accessible Action Wizard. I'm going to open a PDF that was not created with accessibility in mind. The title of this PDF is Scanned Document. That's what it is. It was a PDF that I created by taking a print document, scanning it on our copier scanner, and emailing it to myself. So this document has a lot of accessibility issues, the biggest of which is that it doesn't have actual text. It's just an image of text. I can't select letters or words. I can't search for text, and it has no tags. So if I open up the tag tree, I see no tags available. So this is a more complicated scenario. I don't have the source file. It wasn't created with accessibility in mind. In this case, I might instead use the Make Accessible Action Wizard to start to address the accessibility of the PDF. We're not going to go through all of this right now, but I just want to contrast it with the accessibility checker. So I'm going to start running it, selecting Action Wizard. From the actions list, I'm choosing Make Accessible, choosing Start. And again, it's going to kind of walk me through a series of steps. I still have that previous file I was working with open in Acrobat, so it's actually pulling in the title from that, which is not correct. So I want to type in a title. The title of this file might be something like Acrobat Pro DC PDF Accessibility. I'll say OK. It's a wizard, so it's walking me through a series of steps, the next of which is to convert the picture of text in the document to actual digital text. And these settings have to do with that. So specifying the language of the document, specifying the output, which we want to be editable text and images. If necessary, specifying the DPI and saying OK. Now, Acrobat uses OCR, or optical character recognition, to create some actual text. Depending on the nature of the document, the wizard will ask things like, is this intended to be a form? If so, it's going to look for things that look like form fields and try to create interactive form fields where a user could type in it or select a response. This one isn't, so I'm going to say no. We're asked to set the reading language of the document. It's English, so I'm going to say English. It will attempt to look for figures or images in the document and let you know if they need alternate text. And then the final step of the Make Accessible Action Wizard is the accessibility checker. So from there, the process will be very similar to what we saw with our other document. Accessing the results in the left sidebar and kind of going through them one by one. Again, what I like to do is right-click and choose Fix if that's present, Explain if it isn't, to get an explanation of what the problem is and how to fix it. So 2 tools, Accessibility Checker, Make Accessible Action Wizard. I prefer to use the checker when I have control over a source file and have made it as accessible as possible, and the Make Accessible Action Wizard when I don't have control over the source file and it has maybe some more complicated accessibility issues. There are other considerations for creating accessible PDFs using InDesign. On my screen right now, I'm bringing up a handout that I've provided as part of your exercise files. So the link that I included in the chat, the bit.ly/ETA InDesign, you can access this handout. I'll also send it to you as an attachment in the follow-up email. This is a cheat sheet that I modified for this current version of InDesign that kind of lays out some other considerations you want to keep in mind that are specific to InDesign. We went over some of them, such as exporting to PDF, the different export options and settings you might want to select. We also talked about page title, sort of the difference of displaying a document title versus a file name. There's some other things here that may apply to the InDesign files that you create. For example, a lot of designers will use paragraph styles in InDesign. Things like paragraph, header, list, and so on. If that's something that's present in your InDesign file, you can actually tell Acrobat to use those when tagging your document, and that can make the document tags more accurate. It can result in less work on the back end of having to repair tags. So there's some pretty good instructions for that here, as well as how to add alternative text for any images in your InDesign file. Alternative text provides a textual description for any non-text content. So anything in your document that's not text, whether it's a photograph, clip art, chart, table, an image of text, anything that's not actual text needs a textual description. That's primarily for use by a screen reader user, so someone who doesn't have full use of their vision to see, let's say, a photograph of Big Al that's included in your newsletter. The alternative text would describe that photograph for them instead. So it's really vital for someone with a visual disability to access the content of an image. It can also be helpful for users with cognitive disabilities. A lot of times the alternate text is displayed as a tooltip when someone hovers their mouse over it, so it can provide sort of further information or context about an image. In the online environment, alternative text helps with search engine optimization as well. So it opens up that content to a search engine. So lots of benefits for alternative text. If your InDesign file has non-text content in it, you'll definitely want to add that alternative text. So we didn't go over all of these because they really vary depending on the nature of a document. What doesn't vary is the principles that relate to exporting as well as touch-ups made in Acrobat. So I hope you'll check this out. It's in the exercise files. I also will send it to you as an email attachment. Okay, that's about all I have time for. We are here to help. You can visit us at accessibility.ua.edu. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can do so via that webpage by putting in a support ticket or emailing us at accessibility@ua.edu. We also have a few minutes if anyone has questions or thoughts to share. So I'm going to turn my mic off. If you have questions or thoughts to share, please feel free to do that using your mic or in the chat. Any questions or thoughts to share? All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything coming in through the chat, or it doesn't appear that anyone is attempting to ask over the mic. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and end the meeting. Thank you all so much for your time and attention today. You should be hearing from me in the next couple days with a link to a captioned recording of the meeting, as well as links to the resources we discussed. Thanks so much. Have a great day.